Welcome. Thank you all for your continued participation in our second day of our dual enrollment conference. We have some presenters that are going to discuss early college creating pathways for access to higher education. Please feel free to engage in the content by asking questions or comments into the chat box. And if you do have any additional questions or requests about course material covered in this session, all of this information will be saved within the website, and you can add your email account, and so that in future use, you'll be able to access the documents. Thank you and enjoy the session.
Great. I was going to say good morning, everyone. I guess it depends what coast you're on or in between, but wherever you are, welcome to our panel discussion today. I'm Frank McKay. I work at RTI International, where I'm the program director for our Early College Network, which is a network of early colleges in North Carolina. Today we have with us, I'll go ahead and move to the next slide to introduce our panelists. We have Dr. Elizabeth Glenny, who is a senior research education analyst at RTI International. Beth and I work in different parts of the education division at RTI, where I work on a team that supports implementation and technical assistance for schools, districts, and state agencies. And Beth works in a center that focuses on research and evaluation. Beth, great to be with you this morning. We also have Dr. Julie Edmonds, who is the director of the Early College Research Center at SERVE at the University of North Carolina, Greensboro. If you attended the opening session this morning, you got to hear a little bit from Julie about her research. So excited to be with you, Julie, and hear some more this morning, hopefully with some great questions from our audience. And then we also have Nina Arshovsky, who works with Julie at the Early College Research Center at SERVE, and great to be with you, Nina. Together, Nina will talk about this in a minute. They've actually written a book together about their research on early colleges over the last 17 years. And I appreciate the book because as someone who works a lot with practitioners, it's very accessible. And some of the things that they'll talk about today, the book makes very, very accessible. I like to hand it to people who maybe are on the fence or just learning about early colleges, because I think it describes the model quite well. For today's session, it is going to be a panel discussion. We will have some brief opening remarks from each of our panelists to kind of set some context, and then we will open it up to questions. So we encourage you to use the chat throughout. Our panelists have actually requested that you post questions in the chat so that everyone can see them and also dialogue there. And I would invite you to please go ahead and, if you're open to it, introduce yourselves in the chat and tell us where you're from. I think conferences are great to connect, and virtual conferences, one of the ways we can do that is to hear where everyone's coming from via the chat. So as we're getting started, we just welcome you to do that. And we'll just monitor the chat throughout for any questions. So with that, I'm going to go to the next slide and ask Nina to share a little bit about the team's work together and how they came to write this book.
Thank you for the introduction, Frank. As Frank mentioned, in this session, we're going to talk about some of the ideas and knowledge we present in this book that was published late in 2022, Early Colleges as a Model for Schooling. I'm going to talk a little bit about how this book came about. So 3 of the authors are here on the panel, Julie, Beth, and myself. And Fatih Unlu is one author who is not currently present, but he was with us throughout our research. So the book summarizes some of the data and ideas that we got from the research work, the line of research work, which started about 20 years ago in 2004, when the Gates Foundation and North Carolina State combined 10 and 10 millions of dollars to create the New Schools Project in order to design innovative new schools in North Carolina, mainly early colleges. Julie Edmonds joined the New Schools Research Project as she was at SURF, but she was providing the research support to them. And as they were working on helping to create and design these new early colleges, Julie noticed that there are a lot more students who want to be in early colleges than early colleges can actually take in. So she suggested that some of these early colleges create a lottery. And based on the lottery, she also submitted a proposal to IS to do an experimental study on this early colleges. So that proposal was funded in 2006, and Beth and Fatih were on this project from the very beginning, and I joined a couple years later. So we are basically working together since that time. So there were 3 5-year projects that followed the students who entered the project from 2008 to 2011. Julie, correct me if I'm wrong later on. So we had a number of cohorts of students, about more than 4,000 students in total. So some of the students were in early colleges and some of them did not get in by lottery, which created a comparison group, and we could follow all of the students up until now to see what outcomes are for the students. Then there was another grant from Arnold Foundation, and now we're following the students as part of our evaluation of the North Carolina statewide dual enrollment program. So the data that is coming from the state, from DPI, includes student course taking, grades, attendance. Then throughout the studies, we had surveys of staff and students, including their experiences in schools, their college readiness, and different things. And we also conducted multiple visits to schools, observations, and interviews with students and staff. And so this is the basis for what we are describing in this book. So what are the topics in the books that we're going to talk a little bit about today and then answer your questions about that? So the topics include the history of early colleges, research evidence that we got from all of these studies for early college impacts. We talk about barriers for transition to college that early colleges address and how they address these barriers. We talk about various models for scaling up early colleges and the state policies that are needed to scale up this work. And we make an argument for expanding this model to more and more schools. With that, I think Beth is continuing.
Okay. All right. Early colleges are designed to blend the high school and college experiences. We think of them kind of as a third space. So you got the high school space and the college, but this is kind of a third space that is drawing from both kinds of institutions. They can be set up in many different ways, but here in North Carolina, they are small schools of choice. So typically about 100 entries into the freshman year of the early college, high school. Most of them are located on college campuses, and most of them are on 2-year campuses, but we have some 4-year as well. And the early colleges kind of determine whether they would like to be a typical 4-year high school with grades 9 to 12, and some operate as 5-year programs. and add the 13th grade. So here we have the high school and college experiencing happening for students experiencing them together. Rigorous academic expectations for all students are expected to, take the honors classes in high school classes and then the college classes, but they get academic support. And students, this is designed so the students can have a high school diploma, an associate's degree, or 2 years of college credit by the time they get their diploma. Next slide, please. But there are a lot of barriers to going to college today. And I mean, our book frames them in these categories. And so I'll just share a little bit about what they are and how the early college helps mitigate them. First is financial. And we read about this in the paper all the time. It's too expensive. It's so expensive. And, so people either don't go or they start to go and they don't complete, or, something happens here. But at the early college, students get college courses free of charge. So that's one big support, but then also at the early college, they get counseling and support to apply for financial aid, to navigate the FAFSA, and to learn about other opportunities there. Academic barriers. There's a leap in college work from high school work. And, I'm sad to say that the college curriculum isn't necessarily preparing all students for that. And so we have students going to college and then they take the ACCA Placer and they need to take these remedial classes. And that is a shame. Not only is it discouraging, but those classes don't count to your degree. So it makes the college experience even more expensive. But by providing rigorous instruction in high school and giving students exposure by taking college classes as to the academic level that's expected there, well, we can help meet that barrier. We have found that there are cultural barriers to college. What's expected of you as a high school student is, you show up, you do what your teacher tells you to do, but if you don't, you hear about it. If you ditch school, your parents are going to get a call. If you, don't hand things in, the teachers may ask, where is this? Why didn't you do it? And in college, you're an independent agent. And if you ditch a class, the teacher's not going to call anybody about it or even ask you why. I mean, it's really the student's responsibility. And the early college helps by trying to teach that way to some extent in high school, to give them, more and more opportunities and expectations that they will take charge of their own education. And even things like, okay, you're having trouble. Here's an appropriate way to write an email to your professor. This kind, how do you communicate? How do you use office hours? Those kinds of things that some students may just not know. And logistically, it's a real gauntlet of steps to apply to college. And students, particularly those whose parents didn't go to college, may not really understand what you have to do and when you have to do it. And frankly, the process starts in 9th grade. I mean, but you've got to be taking the right courses then. And so with extensive counseling, the early college provides support in navigating those logistical steps. Next slide, please. So the early college has these supports that I just described, and dual credit has some of them, but not necessarily all of them. And dual credit can happen in many, many different ways. And so this is painted with a bit of a broad brush here, but typically students within a school choose to participate, and the school or the county may decide or district rather, may decide what the eligibility criteria are, but it's not that all students do it. And so what happens is that students who are already college ready and come from more advantaged backgrounds are more likely to do it. They maybe haven't had coursework or support in becoming college ready if they're not. And they may not have parents who are like, well, absolutely, you're signing up for that, my child. They just don't. And so there are differences there and kind of questions about equity with this. Sometimes individual dual credit can be seen as a random act of college credit. Students just kind of take courses willy-nilly that interest them, and good for them. And that may be a great thing, but they don't know. Is the course going to be transferable to a four-year college? They haven't taken high school classes to prepare for that college class. Now, in some schools, high school teachers get credentials so that they can teach college classes. And so either the school hires them or trains them, gives them the PD to do it. Well, in those kinds of schools, yes, the courses students take are more aligned and integrated within the high school curriculum because they're happening at the high school campus. So, I mean, there are ways to, to help provide some guidance depending on the method of operation. So basically, the dual credit program gives the assistance with the academic barrier because students see and learn and respond to what's expected of them in college, and also the financial barriers because dual credit means that they're getting credit for college courses at the same time as high school. So that helps with that. Next slide, please. And that would be Julie.
So when we first kind of started talking about early colleges, we really presented it as this super innovative idea. But it actually really builds on a long history of trying to combine high school and college together. So in the early 1900s, multiple efforts to combine high school and college. One approach restructured schools into something called the 644 model, with grades 1 to 6 being together, then grades 7 to 10, and then grades 11 to 14. Another approach in Illinois added 2 years of college to the high school. And these approaches kind of eventually dissolved and morphed into the community college system that we know today. So this idea of merging high school and college kind of went underground for a while, but it did pop up occasionally. So Simon's Rock was started in 1964. That was the first residential early college, and it was for academically gifted girls in grades 11 through 14. And this model evolved into Bard Early College, which is now a network of early colleges. And I believe I saw an attendee from Bard at this conference. Then in the early 1970s, Janet Lieberman at the newly established LaGuardia Community College wanted to adapt this early college model, but for a different population. She believed that high school students, and she was particularly interested in the first generation immigrants that were in the area, could benefit from an accelerated curriculum that would allow them to take college courses. LaGuardia Middle College was born and enrolling students mostly in the latter 2 years of high school. And it was very successful, and through support from the Ford Foundation was able to expand to what you might know now as the Middle College National Consortium. In the early 2000s then came really the real game changer, and that's when the Gates Foundation was seeking ways to improve high school education. Many of you may remember their effort to break large schools into smaller theme-based schools. One of the models they were particularly interested in was this early middle college model, and they funded a national initiative specifically focused on early college. And they started with students in 9th grade and introduced the goal of earning an associate degree. By the time they stopped funding the initiative, over 200 schools were in place across the country. And these schools were, again, generally seen as successful, and they've expanded substantially. Next slide. Yeah, so this is evidence really of the expansion. Current estimates indicate that there are over about 1,000 early college high schools and early college programs across the country. Here are some of the states with some of the highest participation rates. And the stars on this particular map represent the places where we have actually done some additional research as well. So in addition to the study that Nina was talking about in North Carolina, we also have been investigating efforts to implement early college strategies in multiple states around the country. It is important to note that when the modern early college model originated, most of these had the goal of preparing a student to transfer to a four-year school. Thus, the course is primarily focused on earning an associate degree or transferable credit. However, as the model has matured and you see this expansion that's happening, many early colleges are really starting to emphasize earning terminal technical credentials that students can take directly to the workforce. Next slide. And so we, as well as some other researchers, have conducted several rigorous high-quality studies of the impact of early colleges. Two of these studies, so one done by us and one done by our colleagues at AIR, compare results for early college students who applied to attend the early college, went through a lottery, and were accepted. So this is the study that Nina was describing. And we're comparing the results for those students who went and were accepted through the lottery with students who were randomly not selected not to attend. We've also looked at all the early colleges in North Carolina, and we compare outcomes for students that have similar characteristics. The studies all have really remarkably consistent findings. And so there's positive impacts on a host of outcomes. So at the high school level, we see that early college students have better attendance, lower suspensions, higher graduation rates, much higher number of college credits earned in high school. And again, that's when we're comparing students who applied and got in with students who applied and didn't get in. We also find, compared to our control group, early college students were more likely to enroll in college. They were more likely to earn a post-secondary credential, and they had a higher percentage of advanced credits when they earned it. They also graduated more quickly, and they graduated with less debt. So lots of positive outcomes, which is one of the reasons that, that we believe that this is a model that's worth replicating and scaling up. I'm going to turn it back to Frank, who's going to move to the discussion.
Great. Thank you all. I'll leave this slide up for just a minute, and then I might pull them down so we can see everyone for the panel discussion. But I've got a few prepared questions for our panelists, and we also invite questions from all of you. If you have any that you would like to put in the chat, or if you'd like to come off mute and ask a question, feel free. As you all are thinking about questions, I will go ahead and ask a few here. The first one is for Beth. What does a successful early college look like?
Well, a successful early college prepares its students for a seamless transition from high school to college. That means by having them academically prepared, as well as kind of emotionally prepared, or having the soft skills, if you will, of being able to manage your time and planning for assignments and taking responsibility of your learning. And again, it should be for all students at the early college. Students, once they finish the early college, should really understand what opportunities there are. What are the post-secondary opportunities, generally in terms of where you can apply, but like once you get there, what might you do? Julie just mentioned that they have, they can take more advanced courses more quickly. And so I would say that a successful early college prepares students not only to go to college, but to have a more rich college experience, because they're ready to kind of jump in to more of the advanced courses.
Great, thank you. And I know we phrase that as a successful early college, knowing that early colleges can be standalone schools, or they can be early college programs implemented in different settings. So I think
that's right. But they are organized differently in different states, but the basic goal is the same for all. And that is a seamless transition from high school to college. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Okay, Nina, the next question is for you. In the book, you mentioned the importance of a clear focus on the target population. And can you say more about what is meant by the target population in general for early colleges? And we know that might be defined differently for different states, but generally, and how can we think about balancing targeting underserved students or underrepresented students with other students that we might consider often served when implementing early college programs.
Yes, thank you, Frank. Well, first of all, I should say that many of the early colleges around the country have what is called either design principles or core principles or some principles which early college is organized by. And targeted student population is often is one of those principles. For sure, it's in North Carolina, in Indiana, in Texas, in Massachusetts, in places where there are such principles. That's one of the organizing principles. And it probably comes from a couple of places, this goal of early college. Well, first of all, compared to dual enrollment, which typically, as Beth mentioned before, serves students who are already planning to go to college and who are more or less ready, both mostly academically, I would say, but probably also in other ways to go to college and have their family supports for doing so. Those are people who are taking dual credit. In early college is trying to serve a wider population of students. Why? Well, it comes from two places. One is economic needs of either county or state or the whole country, right? So it's known that there are more jobs in the country which require at least some post-secondary education and not enough people to fill those jobs, which means that schools are required to expand their access to this post-secondary degrees in order for students to be able to fill their jobs. That's economic incentive. And there's a personal need for more education because the jobs which have this higher level of education, they provide oftentimes better salaries and better ways of life for students, which also actually feeds into economic need again, because those people who have better salaries, they contribute more in taxes. And I mean, it's just like in cost benefit analysis, they give more and take less. They require less in public support or in prison cost or whatever other things. So it's coming from both ends. And I think why the target population is prevalent among many states is coming back from the Gates Foundation, who actually required this to be a focus of early colleges. So it's kind of all connected to one another. So when we talk about target population, yes, different schools may think about it a little different, but basically it's mostly about those students who don't have family supports for going to college, meaning either financial supports or it's the parents didn't go to college, so they actually don't know what it takes to go to college, or they don't have necessarily aspiration for their students. So that's why the schools need to provide all of the supports that the family doesn't support. And oftentimes this parents with no college degree overlap with minority status and social economic status and all of this host of things. So obviously the barriers for the students are higher in all these different areas, which we talked about barriers, and the school takes on for overcoming these barriers. But also when we talk about targeted population, it means that students with these characteristics and from this family have to be actively recruited because they don't necessarily see themselves as those students who are going to take dual credit or go to college. So there has to be more reaching out to those students. And obviously they would need additional supports. So when you ask about how to combine expanding access to these group of students with those students who are traditionally would go to college anyway. In our research, we found that a lot of early colleges are doing just that, combining this group of students. So many of them are taking a certain percentage of underrepresented students into their schools. And of course, they're looking to those students who, oftentimes they look to those students who have a better potential to be successful in early college. But also differentiated supports, right? Those students who need more supports can get more supports than those students who don't need these supports necessarily. So that's the way how to combine that. Some schools I know in our Indiana evaluations are talking about matching their early college program population with their general population, not to have a discrepancy like that your dual credit or early college students are higher level students, just matching the population. So different people approach it differently, but it's expanding to those populations that are not necessarily, would go there anyway.
Great. Thank you, Nina. And Nina mentioned design principles for early college, high schools, models. We know there's different sets of those from across the country. I put one example in the chat. Julie put another one from North Carolina Department of Public Instruction. If you have others that you know of or that you like, feel free to share those in the chat, because having these opportunities to share resources, I think, is really great. I took the slide deck down, had a request to put it back up, so I'm going to put that back up as I ask this next question. Next question is for Julie. And again, please feel free to offer questions in the chat or the Q&A function if you have questions you would like to ask the panelists. The next one that I have, Julie, we mentioned that there are different models of early colleges, early college high schools. How do those models differ across the country? And what have you learned that can inform efforts to scale the model to reach more students?
Yeah. So first off, the term early college actually means very different things to different people. And it can mean, it's a term, for example, that Maine uses for their dual enrollment program. And I think Alabama was also, I was in a session with Alabama, and they were using the term early college for their dual enrollment program as well. And then there are also very specific models. So like the one that we're talking about in North Carolina, Texas is another one that has a very specific model with a blueprint associated with it. We'll try to put that in the chat as well. Other Michigan, et cetera. Indiana has also some these design principles that we're talking about. So it means, it can mean very different things. When we think about early colleges, we're not talking about kind of dual enrollment on steroids, right? We're talking about a really comprehensive approach to that has this goal of combining high school and college to create this experience for students. And so we've identified in our book, we lay out a set of non-negotiables basically for the early college model. So no matter how it's implemented, it should have these, we argue it should have these components. So it really should have that target population that Nina was just talking about. So making sure that you're focusing on students historically underrepresented in college. You need that strong partnership between secondary and post-secondary. If that doesn't exist, it's not going to work, right? There needs to be an aligned curriculum that allows students, that is structured in such a way that students can earn both a high school diploma and a lot of college credits. So up to that associate degree or those 2 years of college credits. We also believe that there needs to be a focus on instructional practices that are meant to prepare students for success in post-secondary education. There absolutely needs to be these academic and affective supports to help students be successful. And then you also need to be thinking about the environment for the teachers and the staff in the school. So there needs to be a professional working environment that supports collaboration, data use, ongoing professional growth, and a common vision. And if you look at a lot of these design principles, design elements, et cetera, that people are producing, they often include variations on sort of these core ideas or these non-negotiables that we've identified. That given that, I think the model can be structured in a variety of ways. So we've been talking about this small school approach where the entire school is an early college, and that's And that's in some ways, even though it's complicated creating a new school, in some ways that's easiest because you get to create a new culture from scratch entirely. We also see many programs where there's a school within a school model, so something resembling like the Career Academies model, where a subset of students within a school engage in this. And then there are efforts to transform entire comprehensive high schools into early colleges. And each of these approaches really have their strengths and weaknesses, and we can delve into more depth in those if people have interest in that. And then there's also really variations in the content foci of the early colleges. So as I mentioned earlier, most of the early colleges started with more of an academic focus, so on those transferable credits. We're seeing more of an emphasis now on careers. And so you've got a model, for example, like the P-TECH model, which is essentially really a career-focused early college, where it's got the emphasis on both the college credits and the work-based learning opportunities, leading to some technical credentials. So it can look at a wide range of ways. However, we really believe that the early college model is different from dual. It's not just dual enrollment. It's much more intentional, and it includes these components that we argue in our book. I'm going to stop there.
Great, thank you. And I'm going to take the slides down again. If anyone wants to see different slides, feel free to ask. I'm glad to put them back up. And I believe I don't know if we've already loaded them in the conference app, but we can definitely do that. So I have a few more questions here. Again, please feel free to put questions in the chat if you have any. My next question is for Nina. Julie was talking about models and ways we can scale those models. What have you learned about your work in your work about strategies and practices that early colleges are using that improves student college readiness?
Sure. Well, so first of all, early colleges here in North Carolina defined college readiness not as just academic readiness, but they used really, a lot of them used from, I guess, the support from New Schools Project, which started the early colleges here. They looked at David Conley definition of college readiness, which he gathered from his research, asking colleges about what do they need from students when they enter college to be ready for college. So the aspects that David Conley put into college readiness include academic college readiness, but also cognitive skills, which include things like problem solving, critical thinking, and all of this kind of skills that thinking skills. It also includes study skills, time management, and this because students in college study independently much more than students do in high school. So it also includes the aspirational skills and ownership of learning, right? So in college, student is an independent learner and the learner who wants to do this study. So the student has to be motivated and take ownership for their own learning. Nobody is going to push them to learn. It's on their own. And finally, it's all this logistical things, preparing for college and all of the steps in order to enter to college. So all of this and college knowledge, right? So how is college different from high school? What do you need to know to be able, like how to use the syllabus, or how to communicate with your college instructor now that you're on your own? All of this are part of college readiness. And actually going through the presentations yesterday and today, I heard a lot from different presenters that these could be even more important college readiness skills than the academic readiness itself on its own. So early colleges in our study use this framework, but also they had their own experience, because in the standalone early colleges, basically students starting in the 11th grade and up to 12th or 13th grades, oftentimes it was 5-year, they were taking mostly or exclusively college level courses on college campus. So while they were still enrolled in high school, and while their high school teachers helped them to go through these courses. So the high school teachers in the high schools saw themselves, what do they need to do to make these students successful in college level courses? So they had the first-hand experience, and in our interviews with them, we gathered this experience about, because it's not enough, obviously, for students to just get an access to college level courses. They have to be successful. So what does it take to be successful in this course is basically what defines college readiness. So all of these aspects, teachers knew from their own experience working with students who were taking college level courses. And for academic college readiness, obviously a lot of what schools were doing, first of all, they were trying to expand rigorous courses into middle school. So students who are actually coming to ninth grade are already more prepared than they were prepared before, because we had a lot of complaints that now we got students in ninth grade, but they're not ready for ninth grade work. And we have to take just 2 years to prepare them for college work. It's really big jump. So starting preparing students in the middle school is one of the things, especially when the district took on the college level programs, it's one of the things they did, providing a lot of academic supports. And then intentional aspirational activities like career explorations from the early grades, going to college visits, so students actually know what they're preparing for, both in middle school, high school, but then also college experience as they take these college level courses while they're still in high school. College knowledge, again, comes from both explicit instruction during early college years and being on college campus and taking college level courses. So all of this happened. I mean, you need time for all of this, right? You need time to get all of this instruction to students. So early colleges, most of them had a special period in the day, which was called either seminar or advisory or something. It could be around your lunchtime, expanded lunchtime, or it could be a separate time in the day, where they would provide all this different instruction on all of this college readiness aspects to students. And a lot of programs which expanded early colleges in comprehensive high schools also adopted this way of creating this special time which is devoted to college readiness, because that's one of the most important aspects of early college.
Thank you, Nina. And that resonates in terms of what we hear from the Early College Network in North Carolina. There's been a lot of teacher turnover. The challenges we're having with teacher workforce across the country, new teachers coming into early colleges, understanding, one, what the purpose of the early college model is, and then two, how to support students that we're trying to increase access for. We're starting to be asked with our technical assistance work more about what's out there to help with understanding how to support first generation students, how to develop those college going mindsets in 9th and 10th grade on that accelerated course. So a number of those strategies really resonate. Okay, thank you, Julie. Julie's been sharing some of the other design principles from around the country. Appreciate that. Again, we love sharing resources because we know it helps people in their different aspects of their work. I do have one more question. I have not seen questions coming in through the chat. Again, please feel free to put questions in the chat if you have any. We've got a few minutes left here. The question that I have is, knowing that we've learned a lot about early college models through your research, what do you think we should study next? And what else is there to learn? So we'll open this up to any of you. Beth, I see you're off mute. Maybe we'll go with you first.
Well, I'm interested in learning more about how students choose to go to the early college in the first place, and kind of what motivates kind of the middle to high school link, like what preparations in middle school can help students think that they could and should apply to something like this and to be ready to do so. So I think it's that kind of pre-link that interest that I think would be important to know right now.
As a former middle school teacher, I love that, because we know that college readiness is, it's not just a ninth grade thing. It really starts K8. So I appreciate that. That'd be great to learn more about. Julie?
Yeah, I totally agree with that in terms of, what we can do to make more students ready to take advantage of that opportunity. I think there are still some outstanding questions around sort of the impact on employment and earnings, and we've got some preliminary results there, and we're hoping to share that with people over the next few months. So we're excited about that. I think there are lots of questions really around sort of scaling up the model and what are effective strategies for scaling up the model. We don't have any or very little research, except for there's work that we're doing in Indiana right now around sort of the impact of that kind of school within a school model. So if you've got a track within, so most of the research that's been done so far has been done on those small school model. And because it lends itself very nicely to a randomized control trial, which is why we kind of did it that way. And so, but there's lots of other ways that people can implement this model. And so I think understanding more about the impacts of different designs and about how to do those effectively. And then I think there's a ton that we can learn about how to support students better within this context. I mean, I think the early college is a really great setting to explore sort of these other ideas about how to support students in dual enrollment courses more effectively, the kinds of instruction that are needed to prepare students, questions around sort of, the rigor of dual enrollment courses and regular high school courses. And there's a whole bunch of questions that I think people have around dual enrollment that can be studied nicely in an early college setting, given sort of the intensive experience that students have there.
I also have a question which bothers me for quite a while, especially doing this work in Indiana, because in their early colleges they have this transfer pathway, Indiana Early College Transfer, where they they provide transferable credit that they call it academic early college, and they have CTE pathways, a number of different pathways, and giving all these design principles and goals of early college to expand access and enroll this underrepresented population, how do you balance access to transfer pathways and CTE pathways? And because we're talking about active recruitment of students into early college, because they don't necessarily think about that they're college material. But again, how do you do this recruitment? How do you decide who to recruit to transfer, who to recruit to CTE, and how to handle this whole situation? That's kind of things I'm interested in.
Yeah, and I would say that whole area of sort of technical credentials within early colleges, that's a really right area for exploration too, because there's a growing number of early colleges that are definitely focused on that. So good reminder, Nina. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you. Plenty of research to be done. And I know, as someone who works a lot with early college high schools in North Carolina and Massachusetts, the research that you all have done just seems like it's really having an impact on policy as well as implementation of early college models. So just thank you for that extensive research that you've done, being willing to share it here today, being willing to share it in the book that you've published. As we wrap up, I want to thank everyone for attending today. As we mentioned, Julie is the director of the Early College Research Center at SERVE. You can find her in the presenter details for the conference here. Please reach out if you have questions for her or Nina. Beth and I are at RTI. Please reach out if you have questions. We have some resources on the slide here. And also, I put it in the chat, but want to make sure you are invited to join us at our 2024 Early College Summit in Durham, North Carolina. We had 9 states attending last year, getting lots of interest. So if you enjoy these types of conversations, hearing from researchers, practitioners, there's something for everyone. Please reach out if you have questions. And we are also offering a study visit on June 3rd. If you want to see some early colleges in North Carolina, come join us on June 3rd for a pre-conference activity there. And with that, we're at time. So thank you again for joining us. Thank you, Beth, Nina, and Julie. And hope you all have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Frank, and thank you, Anika, and thank you all for joining us.
Thank
Thank
you.
you all.
There's a question in the chat about the recordings, and yes, they will be available on the website, the conference website, for about 30 days, and then I think they will be moved to a YouTube channel, and we will make sure that you all know where to find things.
Terrific. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, everyone.